Hello and welcome to All Stats Aren't We, a podcast in which Leeds fans cast their combined eye over goings on at Ellen Road, giving scrutiny to the underlying statistics and tactical footings at work at Leeds United. I'm Adam Elliott, the Lucas Mecha goal of the podcast. Fantastic finish. Leeds don't lose when they score the first goal under Daniel Farker. And I'm joined today by the equalising goal immediately after we scored the podcast. It's Martin Riley. Well, at least there's still plenty of time. It's still good. It's still good. And finally, I'm joined today by the second and third goals of the podcast. He's just a little airborne, but he's still good. It's Dan Holdsworth again. Dan, how are you doing? I've not podded with you for a little while.
I'm doing about as well as we defended on Sunday. Under work stressful, shall we say, at the moment, and and Leeds aren't providing much relief.
I feel that one.
Otherwise, fine.
Yep, I feel that one very much. Have you eaten something to make you feel good for tonight, at least?
And I had a bit of a dull dinner tonight. It was just some baked salmon and rice and green beans with a bit of, just put some bloody sweet chili sauce on the side just to try and give it something vaguely interesting, and it didn't work. All doom and gloom, aren't we?
All doom and gloom indeed. Martin, how are you and what have you had for tea?
I'm all right. I'm better than Leeds defending again, same as Dan, really. Nothing to complain about. I've had a nice tea, some homemade chips and some beef grill steaks, which was all right. Yeah, it filled the hole, and I'm ready to talk about Leeds United. And yeah, happy, joyous times.
Happy, joyous, yes. We've lost 4 of the last 5 league games in a period where we all identified it as a run of games to get points. So I think we're all doing fantastic at the moment, having only beaten West Ham. I want to be, and I'm going to start off this podcast a little irritated. Someone, I think it was Wiggy on Twitter, who knows the pod very well, said that I had pasta for tea tonight. I haven't had pasta. And Martin, you replied and you said that was a good guess from him. I didn't have that. I had proper like lamb kebabs, Greek style, very, very nice on flatbreads and loads of olives and feta cheese and hummus and all sorts. So it was really, really good. And I want to make that very known. But I'm not doing so well, as you both are, because of Leeds United mainly as well. Is there any news, Martin, to talk about? I don't think there is anything going on. We've got an international break now. So I guess the news from the podcast is that we're going to have a bonus podcast this week, which will be something along the lines of looking at January's window and all picking out a player that we would like to see Leeds sign. A bit like a scouting pod, but not quite the same. But just one player for any position that we think is needed. Go on, Dan.
Yeah. I'm going to say we've got a fantasy budget. We all get some money to spend and we have to spend it wisely, sort of type thing, maybe.
Yeah. I've already decided on my player, so that's good to know. So I'll probably be on that pod. But yeah, that's the main thing. We'll have that on Patreon, which is where, Dan?
Patreon.com. I've lost my notes now. Tell me quickly. Patreon.com /
Put him on the
All Stats
spot.
Like We. There we are.
Yes.
Yeah. You did there. It's been a while.
So please subscribe if you haven't already. It does really, really help us out. And if you are listening to this one, you can watch it over on YouTube. It should be there in the next couple of days. If you want to stop listening now and wait for it to go onto YouTube, that's the same, patreon.com. YouTube.com, All Stats Aren't We. We'll be over there for most of the season now. Please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. It really helps us out. But I don't think there's anything else to say, so we're just going to get straight into the game summary and talk about Leeds United, not just the Forest game, but all sorts of Leeds United stuff, I think. Shall we start? Yes, I think we should. Leeds approached the game with their usual 4-3-3, with Nottingham Forest opting for a 4-2-3-1 for Sean Dyche. Forest had the better of the opening exchanges. Inside the opening 12 minutes, they had 5 shots with a mixture of set-piece shots and open play chances thrown in as well. But despite this early flurry, it was Leeds who took the lead, with Lucas Mecha scoring with a fine low finish, making the score 1-0 in the 13th minute. Parity was immediately restored in the 15th minute when a cross was put into the box, which Lucas Perry palmed into the box, and Ibrahim Sangare, being the first to pounce to finish in the middle of the goal past Perry to make the score 1-1. For the rest of the first half, Leeds struggled to get a foothold in the game and get into the opposition's half at all, and didn't have a single shot for the rest of that, and their only shot came from the goal. Forest, meanwhile, had a number of efforts, albeit mainly low-value chances, and the half then ended. The second half was a little better from Leeds, who were able to have some shots on goal, but didn't look likely to score. And the second goal of the game came in the 68th minute when Amari Hutchinson drifted in across onto the head of Morgan Gibbs-White, who lifted the ball past Lucas Perry to make the score 2-1 to the hosts. Leeds laboured and used all of the subs possible, and were more threatening as a result. However, it was all for naught as they weren't able to score, and the game was finally ended when a penalty was awarded when Harrison clipped Hutchinson's heels, resulting in a penalty being scored by Elliot Anderson. In terms of the key stats, this was one of Leeds' toughest ones to take in terms of the numbers. 2.5 expected goals for the hosts from 14 shots. Obviously a penalty in that, but still. And only 0.69 expected goals generated from Leeds' perspective. Leeds also had more possession, which maybe we'll come on and talk about in a bit. 54% to Forest, 46%. Right, so let's get into the interrogation. I don't want to leave it any longer. So this is going to ask a few questions to the guys and see what we end up deciding about various different things, not just on this game. But let's start with the game, because there's a lot on people's minds. But, you know, first, the game is what matters most right now. What went wrong in this one in particular then, Martin? We struggled to create any meaningful chances, really. Even the chance that we had, I think, was a 0.06 expected, which Mecha made post-shot 0.6, which was very good, I have to say. But still wasn't a big chance. It was still a chance that was well taken, but it still wasn't a big chance for Leeds. So what did we actually do wrong in possession in the match, which meant we weren't able to generate as much chances as we would have liked?
I think it was just, again, a case of not going with the correct game plan in this one, and trying to build too slowly from the back. And Forest were happy for us to do that. And they clogged up the middle of the pitch and had their press nice and narrow, not too aggressive in moments, but they were able to stop us from getting the ball into their third with ease, really. We didn't really threaten them for large parts of this game. I think the only spell where we looked semi-decent was in the opening of the second half, for about 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes at a push, but then they scored, which sort of deflated the squad a bit. And although we did start to pick up a bit more threat after all subs came on, it was just all a bit rushed, and we still didn't really look like scoring. Dan James brought a bit of energy into the side. Calvert-Lewin was able to go a bit longer, more centrally, and that did help out a little bit. But I think the main issue was the way we build up was really played into Forest hands, and they were happy for us to do that. They were able to get to a lot of the second balls when we did try to go long, and we just didn't do well. A lot of individuals underperformed, I think, in this one, on an individual level. But I do think that the main thing behind this one is that we didn't get the tactical setup right for this one again.
Dan, this was Leeds losing their first league match under Daniel Farke since scoring first. 47 wins and 6 draws before that. Obviously, most of those in the Championship, but still, it's a record gone. I don't want you necessarily your thoughts on that, but usually when we go ahead, we look a lot better than we did, and we try to actually like impose ourselves on the game, and we weren't able to do that here, though, were we?
Well, it was like Farke had us set up to do some kind of like Russell Martin team impression, and then we blag a goal in front. You know, get lucky. Right? Okay, you've been given a card here, a lucky card. Now revert to the situation that's been presented to you, where you can sit and counter and look to turn Forest and go in behind. But oh no, he just tried to continue with the weird, slow build-up possession plan he had. Had no real plan to kind of draw the opposition out and hit them in behind or whatever it is, or make space. It was just like, I don't actually know what we were doing, really. That's the thing. I had no idea. And we got like lucky going 1-up. It was lucky. Nice. To be fair, nicely taken. Nicely won by Okafor, and Aronson laid it off nicely. But like, we've been given that piece of fortune. Right, take it and run with that, and play the counter-attacking style. But I know we wanted to continue with the ball, slowly building, going nowhere. So I don't know.
Martin,
I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm just grumbling. Sorry.
No, it's absolutely fine. We'll probably need some grumbling today. Martin, you have some data on screen or graphic on screen, which our lovely listeners can't actually see. but it's all about open play crosses. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so that's one thing that we didn't manage to do as well, which wasn't really helping to generate chances. This graphic I've got here shows you total open play chances that we've made. In total, I can count our crosses quickly. We had 7, and only one of those was successful. I think Forest have more than that on both sides of the pitch. So they've got more than double the amount of crosses into the box that we put in. And it's not like Forest had a big target man who they're looking to hit.
Nope.
But they're getting balls into the box and hoping things will happen. And both of their open play goals were scored because of crosses being put into the box. The first one, a low cross being put across the face of the goal, which Perry didn't do great to parry straight into the middle of the box. And then the second one, obviously, was just a nice cross and a decent header, but still unmarked, really, was the player. But we'll get into the goals a bit later on. But when we did get to the final third, we weren't really doing much in getting balls into the box and trying to make things happen. And that did cause us problems, and Forest were the opposite and were able to do it. It's not like this season we haven't done this either. We have generally used quite a lot of crosses, and I'm not sure if it's because Calvert-Lewin wasn't on the pitch that we thought, nah, we're not going to bother doing that, or what the reason was behind it. I know we weren't in their third very often to attempt these crosses because we struggled to get into their third, but when we were there really wasn't a whole lot of action going on. And I can't do this now to show you, but of all of those crosses as well, only one of them was in the first half that we made. So we only attempted one cross in the first half, and all the rest of those were in the second half. And I'd imagine a lot of them will be in later on when Calvert-Lewin was on the pitch. So, yeah, it's a concern that we weren't trying to... I mean, I know Mitchell is not Calvert-Lewin, so he's not quite as good in the air, but he's also not Dan James. He can win aerials. We can still attempt to do that. In pre-season against Manchester United, he was the starting striker for that game, and we went long to him quite often in that, and he was good at it. He was able to bring down the balls nicely, and he was doing well, and that was against a team like Manchester United who do have some good quality aerial defenders. So I don't know why we weren't able to find balls to him in the same way that we have done for Calvert-Lewin in games, because we did actually go longer in this one more. Again, I don't know what percentage that is later on when Calvert-Lewin was on, but we hit around 18% of our passes, which were long in this game. Just I ran the data earlier of what I've been doing, which is much higher than what it has been in recent games. So we did have moments where we were going long. We just weren't finding the players in the right areas, and whether it was going for more longer balls into the wider spaces to try to get Aronson or James or whichever winger to run onto. Maybe that was what we was trying to do. But whatever we were trying to do when we were doing it, it just didn't work, and we really struggled.
I don't think we were... I've got a theory about that. I think we were kind of rushed into playing long balls when the build-up failed. So I think it was a failure state rather than a plan. That's my view on that. So we're passing it side by side, and then we're getting caught because obviously Forest had pressing traps. Then we're just hoofing it long, and it just wasn't constructive. I would have liked for us to have gone long in this game, but I have a serious, clear plan about how we're going to go long and why, and what's going to follow on from that. So if it's going to put the ball in behind, so they can have the ball back and we can counter press, fine. Or if we play the ball up to Neptune for a hold up play and build off the second ball, fine. But I don't think there was a plan to do either of those two things. Like a constructive long ball, it was just panic after a bad build up, hit it long. That's my feeling on that. So yes, we went long, went long often. And a lot, but badly. Whereas in other games, we've gone long quite well. The Bournemouth game, for example, we went long in a good way.
Yep, I want to add on to what Dan just said there and say, I think another reason that backs up what you're saying is where the positioning of the midfield was. If we were planning to go long, they would have been there to support Calvert-Lewin for those second balls a lot more. Actually, we saw at least a couple of our midfielders actually joining in with the centre-backs and the full-backs in the build-up phases, and it was to our detriment. So I don't think that was the plan at all. And just on
we
that,
emptied the midfield out. Yeah,
the build-up structure in general, one of the big things was you saw it a lot in the first half, not quite as much in the second. You had Goodmanson really pushed up the line, who's our only left-footed defender in the build-up phase, and he was a lot higher than you probably want him. You had Stack dropping in around the sort of left half space to receive. And then at the same time as both those things, you've got a right-footed left centre-back, and you've got no Pascal Strauch, who's definitely our best ball-playing centre-back. And I think even people that don't like him are agreeing with that as a sentiment now. And then we didn't have Altanaka, who's easily our most pressure-resistant midfielder as well. So essentially, you've got either the right players and the wrong tactics, or the wrong players and the right tactics. I lean more towards the former. I think that we had the right players for the most part in that 11, probably maybe one that I can think of, but the wrong tactics. If you're going to play Beal, who, as you mentioned, we're going to talk about him later though, Dan, so don't go into this too much, but you mentioned it in pre-season, Dan, when you'd done some watching of him. He has quite a nice ping kind of pass from the back into advanced areas. His longer range passing looked pretty good. We aren't utilising that. And you've got a midfield three that can win the ball back from counter-pressing because they are physical. I mean, I think Stack's playing injured still because I don't think he's going into challenges in the way that he was in the first 3 or 4 games, not at all. So I still think his ribs are causing him an issue. But the other two are still big and physical and combative, and we're not even making use of them. So we're basically playing with a midfield that skill set isn't suited to the way Farke is trying to get them to build up. We're not playing with enough ball progressors in those sort of defensive and midfield areas, and we're not playing the right way at all, in my opinion. So I'm not going to have too much else to say on this podcast because that's my main major point, really. But yeah, secondly, and probably more worryingly, is the fact that we conceded 2.5 expected goals, Dan, which is our third highest expected goals against of the season. And I know there's a penalty in that, but still, the amount of actually being conceded is obviously worrying. But this is coming after we conceded our second most XG of the season against Brighton as well. So it's 2 games in a row now. It's not a question in itself, but yeah, it's something that people are clearly talking about at the moment, the recent kind of games as a block. And Jamie in the Discord, a good friend of ours, said, are the goals we're conceding due to individual errors or problems with the setup? Now, how do you view that kind of out of possession stuff? What's causing the issue there?
So I wasn't around last weekend, so I didn't watch Brighton games to confession, but my feeling in this game was that Forest had identified a problem with crosses and cutbacks. They were crossing so often because I think they'd spotted that my view is that we tend to get drawn towards the ball like a kids team when defending, a bit like we used to do under Jesse Marsh. So we saw with the equalising goal, if you freeze frame it when the ball is spilled by Perry, like everybody's towards the left-hand side or the right-hand side as you're looking on the screen. And the ball breaks towards the left, which is kind of around the penalty spot, and there's hardly anybody there. Like, Stack's at the edge of the box, Longstaff's picking somebody up, everybody's pulled over. Bogle's where you'd expect like a centre-back to be, if that makes sense, and Bogle should be out pushing up on one of the other players further up wide. So it just feels like we get drawn ball side, and the moment the ball breaks from a cross or a cutback, like the defensive coverage is in the wrong place for me. So I don't know if that happened against Brighton, but I felt that this was a fault here. I think I've seen it before this season, so I do think there's an element of we're getting drawn ball side as a collective, and then panicking, and not looking over our shoulder. Defenders aren't looking over the shoulders, or midfielders aren't tracking runners, or whatever it is. It's because they're all ball focused. I think too ball focused.
Yeah, and a lot of it's been our left side as well, even though we all praise Gabriel Goodmanson a lot this season for how he's done, has been down either his flank or around the sort of centre-back area in between them. So yeah, I totally agree with that, and we all mentioned that during the game as well. Martin, do you have anything to add to what Jamie said?
Yeah, so I'd basically say, first when I was starting to see these goals, because just to clue that in, there were 2 goals which were from similar sort of circumstances against Brighton,
not sure,
where people weren't picking up midfield runners, and there was not just midfield runners. First one was Welbeck not being picked up in a central area, and when the ball was crossed over, he was just totally unmarked. And then the second one was something a little similar, but it was one of the midfielders, runners who got through and within space. And first when these sort of errors started popping, I was thinking it's just individual stuff. It's individual switch off in the moment and not doing the duties and tracking players, but it's happening more and more now, and I do feel that it is more to do with the setup. In the question which Jamie asked, is I feel it is more the way that the players are being trained, and because of I think there's some sort of similarities between the way Daniel Farke sets up his press to the way Jesse Marsch does in it's the German style of counter pressing, which is very ball orientated and not man orientated at all. So there's not really any thought to the men. They're just keeping an eye on where the ball is at all time. So I feel like there's something in the training with the way they're doing it that's encouraged, and they're trying to keep an eye on where the ball is and not paying enough attention to where the players are, who they need to be marking. They're not scanning enough. They're not looking around to be aware of who's coming in and where. During the first goal, I did see Longstaff keep an eye on the player who's coming in, but that player was already moving towards where Bogle was, so there's already a player there. So he was so two players were picking up that man essentially, and I feel that Longstaff shouldn't have been picking up that man, but he just saw a man out of the corner of his eye and thought, I better move towards him. But it's still too much ball focus, and it was quite egregious against Brighton, where the errors in not looking and tracking players.
Yeah, and this game, Forest, if you freeze it, like stacks like towards the edge of the goal penalty box, nowhere near anybody, just in no man's land, like he's having a breather basically. Like if he'd have tucked in, Longstaff could have probably pushed across or pushed out to where the ball fell, or so it's just a lack of kind of dropping back in and compactness. I think in that situation was a factor as well. So Longstaff was probably covering quite a lot. I'm not completely absolving him of blame, but I think he wasn't getting that much help from Stack in this particular case, and I'm not sure what Ampadu was doing. He was looking around or something as well. So yeah,
he was trying to stop the cross.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. So, but yeah, you've got three midfielders, two are active, one's not. That's a big chunk of your defensive stability missing, isn't it? There, it's not the only fault, but that feels like a factor.
Such a weird one with Stack. Obviously, I watched a lot of him at Hoffenheim, and even when they were bad and they would lose a lot, he would always look pretty good because he'd do a lot of defensive work. Get through a lot of defensive work. I remember
the reports. Yeah.
Because in those first 5 games, he'd covered the most ground of any Premier League player. You can say that some of those performances weren't the best, but at least the kind of intensity was there. And I think the ribs have done him, and I don't think he's right. I'm sure of it, and I'm not just making excuses for him. I do think there's something to be said of, so just to answer the question, I think people are missing the fact that last season Leeds put the best defensive numbers in the Championship, but we also had the most possession, and part of our way of defending was to possess the ball, was to have basically the better ball players in those deep areas just knock it about between them, and the opposition would just get frustrated, and it would be really difficult for them to get a foothold in the game because of that. We're not going to be able to do that this season, so you're testing Farke's mettle in terms of his defensive nous as an actual coach, and I agree, Dan, I think a lot of it can probably be still attributed to him, and because he's just not had to do that kind of side of things as much in his career as a coach, so it's probably not something he's as attuned with and as good at. But then, we had a question from Wiggy, which ties in with what Jamie was asking. He did say Metcha scored a goal, but the rest of the game he complained about the ref and fouls. Okafor did not very much apart from his part in the goal, and the loose pass was criminal from him. We've not got any creativity. Farke can be blamed for the way he sets up, but the players are at fault too. And I get your point, but I still think it comes to me down to Farke. It all comes back to that. I can't. I know that some people listening are probably going to be quite frustrated and say that we're just causing a bit of a pile on him, but it's just how I see it at the moment. I think there are some individuals doing some silly things, like Ampadu in the Championship. Not the kind of player that would switch off around the edge of the box. He was actually one of the better players in the entire league at kind of having a bit of I used to call it a nose for those situations and danger in those situations, and just would clean up. But he's not doing that as much in the Premier League. He's not as aware. I don't know really why, other than coaching. I can't really put it down to anything else. So that's where I stand. And then the other thing I wanted to say, this kind of discussion about player performances and tactical framework and what's more to blame it always frustrates me. This goes back to a long time ago, speaking to John on this podcast, and it used to really frustrate him as well, because player performances can only be judged within a tactical framework, but they both are intrinsically linked. They impact each other equally. If players are in the right areas and right positions and with the right profiles around them, even if they're an average player, they can look better than that, and they can look better than the sum of their parts. I've used that phrase a lot today. But, judging them completely, I think a lot of people are quick to blame the players at the moment, or recruitment, and say it's not good enough, X, Y, and Z. I'm not saying Stack's intensity look good enough here, but I just think a lot of it is they're just not being coached well, and they probably don't fully know the plan. I think a lot of these goals being repeatable from the opposition is probably, symbolic of that. So that's where I'm at. And Jamie even responded to his own question and said, it does annoy me how a well-drilled defence is more often than not credited to the coach, but a defence that consistently concedes goals in similar situations is blamed on the players. And I couldn't agree more with that. So I'm going to leave it there and ask this next one from another good friend, Rish, in the Discord, who said, aside from Arsenal, we were competitive in every game up to and including Spurs. Since then, we've become inconsistent, fortunate, or just not in the game. What do you think has changed? Martin, I'll let you go first if you have an answer to that one.
I'm not really sure anything massively has changed. I still think we are still doing the similar things to what we were doing, and especially in possession, where we haven't really changed the way we are looking to approach, other than some individual games like against Bournemouth, where we're still not sure whether that was tactical.
I'm more sure now.
Farke wanted to do.
I think that was Bournemouth.
I am too. I am too. If you let me finish, yeah,
Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. So we weren't originally sure whether that was tactical or whether that was forced by Bournemouth, or the players were deciding to do it by themselves. And I am leaning more towards it is that it was against the tactical plan. So I don't think it is that the players don't know the tactical plan. I just think it's that maybe the tactical plan isn't the best thing for it. And the teams we've been facing recently have seemed to have figured that out. And we said before this season started that the levels of analysis in the Premier League is levels above what it is in the Championship, and teams will pick up on these sort of things and ways that you can hurt a team quickly. So now we are a good 10 games into the 11 games now into the season. That's a lot of data for analysts to get at and find where the holes are, where teams are able to make these chances. And I think teams have picked up on that, and their analysts have fed that to the coaches and said, okay, well, we can do this, we can do this, we can do that. And I think that is what has changed, is more the opposition and the way they look to hurt us, knowing where our weaknesses are. And at first we were a bit of an unknown quantity because a lot of our players were new, especially in midfield areas. So the analysts will have known what to expect from this new look side with so much change in it. But now they know what players have weaknesses, where they should be in the setup and where they shouldn't be, and et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's been the biggest thing which has changed, Rish.
Dan?
I would just agree with Martin. I think the level. So we in the Championship, we occasionally got frustrated by Farke not adapting to certain games, certain situations, particularly at the end of his first season when he started to go a bit wrong, and then into playoffs, like he didn't adapt against Bristol Martin in the playoff final, for example. Games leading up to that. So we all know Farke has this. Now, that's just going to be shown even wider, isn't it, in the Premier League, because the quality of coaches and like Martin says, analysis they're providing is going to be that level up, compounded by better players and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's just Farke isn't an adaptive coach. Never has been, never will be. You know, he'll adjust his press a bit, but that's like the extent of it, really. I think teams are allowing him to lean into what he wants to do. You know, steady build-up possession. Early in the season, teams, thought we'll have a go at Leeds, we're a new team, let's get stuck into them.
Yeah.
And that suited us. It forced us to play long, quick, early. We won it, and we've counter-pressed, and off we went. Our counter-press is pretty good, generally. So if teams just take the counter-press weapon away from us, that means we're not creating so much. If teams have spotted an error with, crosses, cutbacks, whatever, then they're gonna maximise on that. And, that's one of our weapons taken away. That's one of our weaknesses exposed. And it flips what have been quite tight games into games game states that don't suit us. So, and Farke can't adapt. So that's the problem as I see it.
Yep, I totally agree with both of you. I think we've become predictable, and teams are just feeding off that. And Darren, formerly of this podcast, made this point that their coaches have totally outthought us about how to play against us because Farke is predictable. And then there was a bit of other analysis, and it's the recent games, isn't it? Like, you can say that individuals can do better, but I just don't know they've been given the best chance to do well. I don't think we're utilising the squad that's been built by recruitment to its maximum capacity. It's as simple as that, really. So yeah, you can pinpoint moments in individual games throughout the season that have gone right or wrong, but it feels like there's been more going wrong recently, and I think it's due to teams doing what Dan said, essentially.
Just on one point, there was a question earlier about Nemecha and his performance, how he didn't win anything, all that kind of stuff. Like, I'm not sure I would expect him to win aerial battles against those centre-backs. They're really, really, really strong centre-backs. Yeah. So, okay. So what's the tactical approach? Would it be better to put the ball in behind for him to turn and run on them? Because I think Nemecha might have the legs on those guys in that situation. Or do we just get players close to and all Nemecha's job is just to disrupt them, and then we pick up the second ball? Neither of those things happened. So therefore, all we saw was Nemecha fail, set up to fail and fail. It's not his fault. Like the one time he got good ball, he put a great chance away. So, it's a fair question to question his performance, but I think there's a tactical reason for that. He was set up to fail, and there wasn't a support there to pick up second balls, or there was no kind of plan to get him behind those centre backs and move them around. So don't blame him, blame the plan. Sorry, that was jumping back to a previous question, but it felt related.
I liked the addition there, but there's not really much else to say here. And the numbers are starting to become a bit more worrying, as has been pointed out. Brighton, Arsenal, Forest are the three worst performances in terms of expected goals against this season. 2 of those have come in the last 3 games, and Arsenal is Arsenal away. So that is what it is. We know what went wrong that day. But even the expected goals numbers aren't looking quite as good recently. That Burnley game's a bit of an outlier in the sense that we were game stated for the whole game there. But, a lot of our better performances have been either at home with the West Ham game, or they were quite a while ago now with the Tottenham, Bournemouth and Everton games. We all put up good numbers in those. But, after West Ham, every other game has been below 1 expected goal created, which is not good. Let's put it that way. That includes a lot of the recent games again, like Brighton, like Forest. So, yeah, that's where we're at. We also conceded first now, and I think this is another point to make, in 7 games, and we've only won 1 of those and got 1 draw. And that's just not helping at all. And it's why I think I said last week that the numbers are a bit noisy for us, because I think quite a lot of the time we are chasing a deficit. This, funnily enough, wasn't one of those games. We actually took the lead here, but it's a point to address, because I can't really understand why at the start of the season we were so solid and suddenly have suddenly become not, other than what Dan said about teams kind of feeling us out in those first 4 or 5 games, and now their analysts have done the work and know how to get in our faces and how to kind of let us possess the ball a bit more. Possession stats for us have been kind of increasing as well as the season's gone on too. Either of you want to talk about that, or should we just get to the elephant in the room?
Elephant.
Right, let's do the elephant in the room then. The big German one in the corner. There's been a lot of noise on social media and beyond about whether it is time to go for Daniel Farke. It really does feel like things have turned, even from people that have been very pro Farke, or even the ones that have been probably more like us. And I know that if you've listened to this pod this season, you probably don't think we're very Farke neutral, because we've probably been more negative. But I actually think on the whole, especially us 3, weirdly, we're probably 3 of the most in this kind of category. Very Farke neutral, very much had positive things to say in the Championship about what we were doing. Even though we did occasionally have some caveats to that and some minor issues, it was largely pretty good. But this season it's been a lot more negative. Shock, because we're losing games, fair enough. We're a newly promoted team in a difficult league. But at the same time, guys, how do you feel about this question about Farke? Or is it sort of just one of them, you go to Forest, you go to Brighton, you go to Arsenal, you just expect to lose those games? Or is there more to it? Are we now in a position where we're feeling like it's time to pull the plug on Farke and to have a bit of an upgrade? Can we do better in those games I've just mentioned if we have someone like Sean Dyche, for example? Dan?
I mean, I wouldn't be that keen on Sean Dyche, but Sean Dyche out-coached Farke and out-adapted Farke on Sunday.
That was my point.
Yeah. So, I'm no Dyche fan. I mean, Martin would agree with this, but I think we missed the boat by letting Nuno go to West Ham. I think I'm not a big Nuno fan again, but I think he would suit the squad we've got. He would get what the squad's been built to do. He would lean into that. We would have a good year and a half, 2 years of Nuno, I would think. And I think would be suited to our squad better than he's suited to West Ham squad, actually. I think we'd be a better fit for him. Players like Calvert-Lewin, the athleticism we have in midfield, which West Ham don't have. But anyway, that's beside the point. So, yeah, I want a manager to lean in to the attributes that the squad has, and I want the manager to be adaptable and think on his feet. Farke is doing neither of those things. Now, a slight caveat is that we've had these bad performances and have all come away from home. Our home performances have been largely decent, okay. That's the only caveat, and we might see a turnaround with a batch of home games coming up soon. Adam's got his hand up, so he's going to challenge me. That's the only caveat.
Not challenging. I just wanted to say, it puts pressure on the home games, right? It does. If you get 3 points from Burnley, Wolves, Forest, Brighton, Arsenal, and I think there might be one more. And Fulham, that's really not great. And so you're looking at
sends you down.
Yeah, it's going to send you down. You need to get at least, I'd say, 15 points away from home. You need to do that, and we've only got 3 out of those games.
Yeah,
that's not great. Carry on.
And the home games we've got coming up are tough home games, whereas that home advantage might be eroded by really quality teams. There's a bit of that as well. So I just back to the initial question. I'm Farke. I'm not going to sit there and boo him and go mental because that's not my style. But we should do better. If we can do better, we should pull the trigger. Now, I'm not party to the types of conversations that clubs can have with agents and working out availability and stuff. But if, for argument's sake, Carlos Corberán is available, or if Silva at Fulham becomes available, we need to jump on that when it happens. They are better coaches than Farke. Period. If you can get a better coach,
if we can convince them.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Martin.
So I've been thinking about this question a lot over the past 24 hours. Just been digesting all the chat in the Discord and seeing where everyone's head's at. And I think that I would be fine if they did say tomorrow Daniel Farke is sacked. It wouldn't concern me, but it would, again, like Dan mentioned, it would be who is going to be replacing him. The clubs who have already done managerial changes in the Premier League, the coaches have gone for are ones who have been recently lost their jobs or available. Obviously, you've got Dyche, who's just been brought in, and you've got Nuno, who's done the managerial run around a few times, and he's in at West Ham now. And it all depends on what the manager could be for me as to who would be coming in to replace him. I do think that we have got quite unlucky with some of our fixtures this season, and some games where we should have got wins or we didn't. Some games where we've lost and maybe we should have got draws out of them. So I think there's been a lot of variance. I think it is quite harsh to pin it all on Farke, but at the same time, a lot of these things could have been improved if he would have been even a little bit adaptable in the way he chooses to set up his teams. And so, that's where I'm at. It's a complicated, loaded question and very much above my pay grade. And I'm glad that I don't have to make that decision personally. But that's where I'm at.
So my argument for doing it now is, first of all, it's an international break, and we've been in this position before, and we didn't make the decision, and we ended up probably not benefiting from that, considering we did get relegated at the end of that season. And it would be a good time to do so, even though you've got games coming up that are difficult. I think it would still give the manager time to come in, implement some ideas and work on some things, even with some players out, obviously, on international duty. Quite a lot of them are, but still, I still think it's relevant. That's point one. Point 1B would be that, yeah, these games are really difficult coming up, and it would just be almost unfair to give them, probably what would be a losing start of games where, the next 4 in particular look really tough, and it'd be pretty good to get even just one of those games where we got a draw or a win. In our situation, probably need a little bit more than that, probably looking at more like needing 4 points from these 4 games, which is a tough ask. And then the argument, I guess, for keeping Farke then is these games, you let him take the hiding. The club would then have an easier kind of decision to make if we've gone on a run of games, which would include, and we've lost 4 of the last 5 Premier League games now. So if we lose the next 4, for example, that would be 8 of the last 9, which would put us in a terrible position. We'll almost certainly be second bottom, I would imagine, at that point, unless Wolves have gone on a crazy run. So yeah, there is that factor. And you could say that Farke should just have those games, but I wonder if someone can come in and maybe has more chance to scab something in one of those games than Farke if they set up the right way. Farke might get, a little bit fortunate. It might end up being a bit like the Bournemouth game where we are forced into playing a certain way and then it ends up, giving us some points. That's possible as well, but I don't know. It just feels like a really good time to do it. There's not an international break for ages. It's not really a break now for ages. The next one you could kind of talk about is the FA Cup in January. It's a long, long time away. So I'm probably leaning more towards do it and just rip the Band-Aid off and start again. It might mean you have to buy a manager out of contract if, there's one that you really like. It might mean you have to look at the free agents market and see who is available. I don't think there's too many that are particularly great from what I know of them. The ones that I don't know as much about, I can't really comment on, can I? So I'm personally of the opinion that the squad is not being utilised to its maximum capacity, and there has to be coaches out there that could get more out of it, even with Farke and having his familiarity with the squad, which he obviously does. I still just don't think he's the best. So I'm more on sack and Farke out than anything else. I think I was already kind of feeling it a little around the Brighton game, but I feel a lot more strongly after this one. These last 5 games were definitely targeted as get to a certain points total, which we won't have hit. And the reason being, some people will talk about the 1 point per game average and the fact that we're still on that. Yeah, but we're probably going to dip below that now. Let's be real. In the next 4, we're probably going to be quite considerably below that. And that's a bit of a concern to have to drag up with those later fixtures. And then you've obviously got the situation as well where players are going to be probably feeling at their lowest in terms of mentality if we go and lose the next 4 under Farke. So a change now, even if we lose a couple of those games, I think it would probably be the most beneficial. But it depends on the availability of who is our top sort of targets. I don't know who they would be. There's been a bit of talk on Wacko, but I don't really want to comment on that because we don't really know. I do like Corberan. He's someone I would say would be good. I know that people listening saying, how can you say that? But Corberan showed a level of kind of flexibility, adaptability with his squads that he's had in recent years. He loves to lean on set pieces as well. His Huddersfield team were really good from them, so it's just another thing to mention. I know you know that, Dan. His Huddersfield team were really, really good at set pieces, and that's why they got as far as they did. So I can see him getting more out of us just on that front. We've still conceded the second most big chances from set pieces in the entire league, despite the fact that we've increased our size and our kind of power in the side. From set pieces, we've not improved at all. So anyway, I've talked a lot there, but I feel like I've made my point clear. I'm with Dan, and Martin's not far off, I don't think. That Villa game was massive because that's clearly the one that is most winnable of the 4, and we're at home. If we do lose that, it's not going to be very good look for us at that point, and the table probably going to mean we drop in at that stage as well. I wouldn't be surprised. But when do we feel it would be the right time to do it? I think we've kind of answered that. You've kind of answered this, both of you, haven't you? Obviously, that's the debate at the moment. Do you feel like it is a bit of a Jesse Marsh situation, Dan, where it probably would be best to just do it now while it's the international break? Is that where you're at?
Yeah, I mean, they can't do it if they don't think they can get anybody. They have to know they can get somebody. But if they're confident of getting somebody, if they feel like Valencia would release Corberan, for example, for a 2-3 million quid fee, spend the money, do it. That would be my view. So yeah, just do it now. As long as you can get someone. If you can't get someone, then wait. But
we could challenge Wolves for Rob Edwards for £3 million. You think that's a smart decision, Dan?
No,
I'm joking.
No, stick to Fark. No. Like, I'm not totally anti-Fark. That I would just say anybody will do. Let's get Allardyce in. Obviously not. Or get Warnock in. Obviously not. But like, if we can get someone decent, like I say, like if Silva becomes available from Fulham, seriously, to give that consideration. I don't know if he's the right style, maybe, but that's the sort of way we've got to think about it. If we can get someone like Corberan out of Valencia, I don't know if he would or not, or someone doing very good work in the French league or in the Bundesliga that might come across. I don't know. That's the sort of thinking. Yeah.
Yep, totally agree. There are a couple of names that spring to mind for me when you say that as well. Boris Svensson at Mainz is not doing great this season, but he's done pretty well. One last job, Sharon, for Neil Warnock, maybe. I'm joking. And I'm with you, Rob Edwards is not the answer at all, and I think Wolves have made a mistake there, which is probably quite good for us. Martin, you're not of the opinion, do it now then, just to make that clear.
No, I don't think we should pull the lever just yet. I think we need to give some more games. I don't think it's quite a Jesse Marsh situation if we don't sack him during this window, because we waited till February to sack Marsh.
Yeah,
true.
So
True.
I'm not saying wait till February by saying don't sack him now. I'm saying give him a couple more weeks, so he'll at least be sacked good 3 months before Marsh would have been, which is still plenty of time for a manager to get in and get his style of play and turn things around for a club if he's worth his salt. And if he's not worth his salt, it wouldn't have made a difference for another couple of weeks, would it?
No, fair enough. And yeah, you're right. You've put in the running order. Sorry, go on, Dan.
It needs to be clear by December, doesn't it? So the new coach can come in and they can tweak any kind of January transfer approach based on that coach. That coach might have a very clear idea what to do.
We've not got a pot to piss in, Dan.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, 49ers have got
no
money.
The recruitment is crap. The recruitment is crap.
Yeah. So it feels. I mean, I would go now.
Just to be clear, we don't think that.
No, we don't think that.
They should go before December. I think they should go before December, so we've got a clear run before the window opens, so we can have a clear plan going forward for the second half of the season.
I think I agree with that. And also, there is that case of like, you leave it a couple more games at least, they'll have a slightly more favourable opening spell of games, which you put in the running order, Martin, kindly. But that's the end of this section. We'll talk in a bit about some other stuff like players stuff.
Sorry to interrupt, just a quick one. If you're enjoying the video, be sure to like and subscribe to help us keep the content coming. And if you want even more, you can support us over on patreon.com/ASAW Patreon. You'll get bonus podcasts, exclusive articles, and access to our Discord community, all while helping us make more of the content you love. Thanks. Now let's get back to it.
Right, the second half of the analysis then, where we'll discuss specific players' performances in a bit more detail, and we'll get some of your questions in as well that we haven't already answered. I think we've answered most of them already. So the goals then, we've already talked about the first couple and who was at fault. How did you feel about Lucas Perry on that first one, Martin? I just wanted to put that to you first.
Well, on live watch, I didn't really think too much about him. I just thought, no, it's the players not picking up the man in the middle. But after I've watched it loads and loads of times, I don't think he should be coming out for that at all. I don't think he should be coming out for it at all. Just stay on the line. That cross was going right to where Bogle was, and he would just cleared it. I think sometimes you just need to trust your defence. We'll deal with those. I know it's quite close to where he is, but if you're going to come out to meet it, boot it with your foot. Just boot it. Goalkeepers can use a feet. I know it will be difficult, but palming it out in that way isn't. No, I don't think so. I think it was at the angle that he would have had to do it. I think it by the best goalkeeper in the world, best. Maybe, but it was pretty. He made the decision to do it in a split second, and you had to get your body shape right, and you have to sort of cushion it with your body to claim it, I think. But I think the worst thing that you could do in that situation is come to claim it and then palm it out into the middle of the box. So yeah, if you're not going to do a better job at getting the ball away from the box when you do that, and don't do it. Just trust your defenders will stop the cross themselves.
Dan, how did you feel about that goal? And then the other goal that was kind of down that side. Did you have anyone that you were particularly wanting to blame?
The first goal, yeah, like Martin says, I think my natural reaction was to be a bit protective over the goalkeeper. I'm naturally a bit that way anyway. But yeah, in hindsight, you should have just left it or booted it, like Martin says. So a bit on him, but then obviously we've already discussed the structural issues. So, Stack having a breather, Longstaff not covering properly, people not shifting over. So it's a bit of a, but if Perry leaves it, it doesn't happen. Unless
and what about the third goal, guys? Because
the penalty.
third goal, frustrated me a lot because I just don't understand the substitution, first of all. I think Goodmanson, will talk about who was our potential man of the match in a bit, but he was clearly one of our better players in an attacking sense. The chance that Bogle put wide, for example, that he put in, and then the few opportunities he did get to drive up the line, I thought he was doing well. So why bring on a left winger at left back who, Hutchinson is a tricky, quite two-footed player. I'm not saying that he's not, but he made Harrison look like a winger playing fullback there, in my opinion. So Dan, what did you make of that?
Well, I presume they brought Harrison on just on the hope that he's going to get high up the pitch and cross the ball, because Harrison can cross a ball well. Calvert-Lewin's come on, so
and play him high up
just
the
thinking,
pitch and cross the ball.
Well,
Why play him a left back
then? Put him on the wing.
It was a left wing back, to be precise.
Yeah, left wing back. He was left wing back, to be fair. Yeah. So, and Harrison, I always used to laugh at the whole Harrison because he's like a hard-working winger. Oh, therefore he could be a defender type attitude some people had, and it's obviously nonsense because his positional awareness in deep defensive positions is obviously really crap. Just look at the goal. He got caught out and clipped the guy. Now, someone might argue he wants a bit of a soft pen. Like, if you're going to get in that position, that situation, and you're clipping people, you're giving pens away. Don't argue. So yeah, it's just Harrison, and it's not his fault. It is his fault, but it's he isn't an aware defender in those situations, so he's going to make those kind of mistakes. The coach should know that. Don't put him there. I guess it didn't matter at that point. We were 2-1 down anyway, weren't we? So.
Right. On the contrary, it really matters. We might have got a 2-2 draw. Dan James came on and made an impact, and we looked like we were a bit more threatening. So it's a shame. I didn't think that.
Dan James was probably a better defender than Harrison.
Yeah, that's probably true. Martin, what did you make of that substitution? That decision to go? He's done this a few times now, hasn't he? He's done the back three and then wing backs. But would you not have just rather have kept the 4-3-3 shape with Harrison pushed up further if you're going to bring him on?
I wasn't really too fussed about this change, if I'm totally honest. It's just that he shouldn't ever have been defending Amari Hutchinson by himself. That's the only thing I'd say. Just leave that to Strauk. Strauk had been brought on and put on that side. It should have been him who was marking those sort of situations and not Harrison. Harrison should have been left further up the pitch to deal with the attacking side of the game. I don't put the blame on Harrison. I just think that it's one of those things that happened, and I'm more annoyed about other things in this game.
Me too.
And also, the second goal, I didn't mention that one. What was Beal doing? Why was he allowing that much space? I know what Beal is like at defending, and he's usually very, very good at that. But I think he is struggling to get to grips with the intensity and the awareness that he needs to be for the Premier League. And I think this is the second one where there's been a cross which has been put in, which has been relatively close to him since he's been playing, which he hasn't got close enough to the player. There's no way that Morgan Gibbs-White should be winning a header in our box with the two centre-backs we've got on. That shouldn't be happening at all.
Gibbs-White is smaller than me, so I totally agree with that. There's no way he should be winning against those guys. You brought me on nicely because I wanted to ask Dan about Jakobiel as the person that probably watched him the most on our pod team, other than Tom Wilson, who we can't unfortunately ask, in pre-season and when we were doing those scouting pods. Martin's opinion, even though he's just said what he's just said about Beal on that goal, hasn't changed, and he still feels he just needs more time. But Dan, we haven't heard from you on this. Is he living up to the expectations that you had when you went into the summer and watched him and enjoyed watching him as well?
No, he's not. No, he's been slightly disappointing, and I was advocating for him coming in for a couple of reasons. Partly, I felt that perhaps it was time for Stroke to come out. He'd been involved in a few concessions, not completely his fault, but I just wondered if it was just time for a bit of rotation and a bit of obviously time to bed Beal in. I don't think he's been used in the right way. I don't think the team's set up to suit his attributes, but also that goal was pretty fundamental. It was pretty basic. He let Morgan Gibbs Wright run off the back of him and didn't pick him up. He's kind of suffering the same way Ampadu's suffering at the moment, not picking runners up. There's a lot of this going on across the team. And how much do you blame the structure, the setup, the stress they're under, or do you blame individuals for standards not being set, people not being switched on? I don't know, but either way, his performance levels aren't great right now. I would still stick with him, particularly for the games coming up where we're up against real good teams that probably will have more of the ball against us. I think those situations might suit him a bit more. But yeah, it's a slight worry, but just take a long-term view. The guy's a good player. He's just got to, first time in England, first time in the Premier League, in a team that's not playing well generally. It's hard. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to have off days. Let's hope he has some on days. Yeah.
And one of his on days in his career, he made Harry Kane really struggle for England against Slovenia at an international tournament. So it's not like he's not done it before in the past, and he pocketed him that day, really.
He's got pedigree.
He's got pedigree. There is that. But yeah, I almost don't want to blame too much the individual. I've made this point already, but I feel like the fundamentals thing, you're right. Like, some of it seems basic, but I think even basics go out the window when the whole team's playing poorly because of the manager's inabilities to set them up in the right way. So I don't want to blame Beal too much, even if he's not tracking his man the way he should. Like, go on.
Well, we all know what it's like at work. When you're under stress, you make basic errors that you don't normally make when you're not under stress. Now, a team that's losing is under more stress than a team that isn't losing. So right now, we're losing for a number of reasons, tactical largely, I would say. So Farke's putting these players under stress and pressure, and that's causing them to have individual errors. So,
yeah, the only obviously rebuttal to that is players like Beal and Stat. We've made a big point of this in the summer when we said that these signings would be good for the squad because they're players that play for teams that have usually struggled, usually lost games. Bigger sides in Germany and bigger sides in Italy, and that's what's happened. So they're used to that, and they should be able to bounce back quicker or not let mistakes impact them as much as maybe some of our boys that are just used to winning for years and years and years. Like Altanaka was a good Fortuna Dusseldorf team for a couple of seasons before he was playing for Leeds. And so he's used to winning and winning and winning recently, and his Japan team wins a lot because they're one of the best teams in Asia as well. So, some of them aren't as used to doing that, and it's fair enough, but other ones should probably be better, I would say. At the same time, and we're still going to bring it back to the fact that I still think it's more on the manager than the players, and I'm not too bothered. But one player that did get a little bit of discussion in the Discord that I wanted to ask you about, Martin, is Jayden Bogle, because he's not looked quite as good. And I do think in the first sort of 6 or 7 games, you could argue that Jayden Bogle was probably our best player this season, but hasn't been as good recently. What do you put that down to, in your opinion?
I think it's an issue with the right side in general that's affecting Bogle, and it isn't particularly him. The 2 players who he's surrounded by around him is Aronson and Longstaff. Are those the most technical and great players to help an attacker succeed? And then if you look at the other side, you've got Goodmanson and you've got Stack, and obviously Okafor. That the left side is so much more technical as a free than the right side is. So, of course, Bogle's struggling at the moment. If the rest of the team isn't doing that well, unless he's got the good support around him, the same as any attacker needs to do well. Well, that is basically what he has been for us. Is an attacker. He's more of an attacker than a defender, and I think that's one of the reasons why. And also, sorry, this is separate to what I was saying, but I sort of mixed up my points in while I was speaking. The fact that he's been better than I think a lot of people thought defensively this season, and a lot of the attacks have been getting funneled down our left. So I wonder if oppositions feel that side of the pitch, our left side, is more vulnerable, and that's why they're not going down Bogle's side, because on the right hand side you've got Aronson, you've got Longstaff, and you've got Bogle. I'm not saying Goodmanson has been terrible defense, and Roden as well. And on the left side, you've also got Biol, who is also still adapting to the league and is not quite there yet in terms of his best levels defensively. So I think there's a number of issues which are affecting both sides of the pitch. It's affecting Bogle in an attacking sense because he doesn't have the right attacking support, and on the left side of the pitch, it's making Goodmanson look bad because he doesn't also have enough support there. Stack isn't at his levels that he was earlier in the season, and I know Okafor isn't as good as Aronson is out of possession, but I don't really care about that because of how good he is in possession. But yeah, so I can kind of understand how difficult it is to select wingers in the Premier League because you can't have two sides of the pitch where they're both flashy and really good going forward, but aren't as good defensively. But I think that is the case what we've got. I'm not saying Okafor is terrible out of possession, but is levels away from what Aronson is and what Dan James are in terms of out of possession work rate and defensive help, what he'll offer his fullback. So yeah, there's a number of issues with both sides of the pitch at the moment, and I do think it does need freshening up a bit, and I wouldn't mind seeing Dan James starting or Billy Nonso. That's one thing that I don't think we have a question about, actually, but Billy Nonso has been in training now for a good few weeks. I don't think this was really specifically asked of Farke as to why he wasn't starting, but I think he mentioned it in response to a different question that it was more for performance-related reasons than tactical or something. And I think he's trying to say that he's not up to his best standards. Okay, fair enough. So why has he rushed back players so often in the past? Why has he rushed back Dan James so frequently? Why has he rushed back even Ampadu so quickly? Why has he rushed back Al Tanaka pretty quickly in the past? It doesn't add up at all for me. And I think Nonto should be on the bench. I think he thinks he's got these two spaces on the bench for two wingers. Who do I trust more? Harrison and James. So those are the two that I'm taking. I don't think he trusts Nonso, and otherwise he would be having him on the bench over one of those two.
Dan?
Just to comment on that, did I see a comment from Fark talking about Nonto having in a bit of a mini pre-season because he didn't really get a proper pre-season, and part of the plan for him coming back is that he wants to give him a bit of time just to really build his fitness and strength up. Now, call that out, call that BS if you want, but that might be true for him. I don't know if you caught that comment. So I'm more forgiving of this in that Nonto has been quite injury prone for a while now, and I'm more forgiving that they're going to take their time with him than maybe others are. I mean, I'll just.
But at the same time, Dan James.
Yeah.
Dan James has been
different
equally
people.
as injury prone as Nonto.
But different people, different, different prognosis from injuries, different, how they respond could vary. Nonto might be a guy that just doesn't come back as quickly as other players. That's true. So yeah, I'm prepared to be more relaxed about it. Just go with Dan James. We saw Dan James was better than Aronson when he came on for that 10 minutes. Just go with Dan James, and then bring Nonto instead.
You interesting your comments on Nonto. Like he, I've just got distracted by Martin's hair clip. He's actually, I think, played the third most or fourth most games under Farke since he's been here. So he's like, he might have had the odd injury here and there, but he's still largely actually come back and played. I think it's the consistency thing that Martin alluded to. Like, he seems to have rushed back others like Ampadu and James, probably two of the big ones I can remember in the last few seasons. He wants them back in as quickly as possible. And yet the same rules don't always apply to each player. He's just not very consistent with it. And it's always been a frustration to me. But this is actually a nice part of this question section, because I have a question about this. Obviously, everyone's feeling a certain way about Farke at the moment, or a lot of people are anyway. But Dan, what is a quick and easy fix that he could do to the 11? I think you kind of said it with the right winger, but is there anything else that you would change to get the fan base back on side again? Or is it more of a tactical thing that we've discussed? Because if it is he ever going to be able to get the fan base back on side? Is it possible to recover from the situation now for him?
It's possible. He could just, have a brain transplant and realise what he needs to do. I would get Dan James in there for a start. I think especially if Calvert-Lewin is fit, because I feel like having someone who's quick to run in behind and maybe pick up flick-ons or be around Calvert-Lewin and respond quickly to those, that's something that's in Dan James's wheelhouse. Okafor, we've seen Okafor do that kind of stuff. So why not have a couple of guys that can get close to and beyond Calvert-Lewin, and we can play up to Calvert-Lewin, he can flick on, or we can win the second ball and those guys can then go and we can release them, in that kind of counter press situation. So that, just as an attacking approach, would make more sense than Aronson, who wants the ball to feet, who wants to turn and drive, which sometimes works, but I think we'll probably see more goals from the sort of movements we get from Dan James. Dan James playing well. I would do that in the short term, and also I think having Dan James, because he's more of an in-behind guy, that might help Bogle. I think Bogle's better operating in deeper areas and not running behind or running wide. I think I'd prefer Bogle combining with the centre mids, and maybe he had a good relationship with Dan James, and Bogle knows when to release the ball. So if we get Bogle in those kind of centre mid, half space areas, and Dan James is on the shoulder, that's another attacking weapon, isn't it? We saw last season that happened quite a bit. So I would just get Dan James, the Bogle thing. Maybe that improves our right side quite a bit, just because they understand each other probably more than Bogle and Aronson do. And it depends on the game, but I would consider using Struijk in some games and Beal in others. The Villa game might be one of those where Struijk might be a better option. We might have more ball, so therefore, better ball coming out of the left side of defence might be handy. In other games, like against the big boys, then I'd perhaps go back to Beal and just, look to last line defend it.
Yeah, big sexy pirate certainly would be handy in those areas, especially because he's left-footed. It adds a bit of balance too. But I think for me, it is either of James or Gnonto needs to come in, because Bogle's combination play with both those players for different reasons was really good in the Championship.
Yes, agreed.
And the other reason, I think there's two more reasons for James as well, I think if we're going to go that way. James actually likes to cross the ball a lot. You can say that they're not the most consistent, but he does actually just like to get it out his feet and just put it in the area. Gnonto's also got that in his locker, like two of his best crosses I remember were both for Pirro. You got the one against Norwich in the semi-final, you had the one against Sunderland at Stadium of Light. Those two really stand out as good crosses from Gnonto from that side, but I still think I'd prefer James for that. But actually, I think the one thing that James should also bring is you can almost have a game plan of just, let's go to Calvert-Lewin's head. He can flick it on, and as soon as that motion is made to go long, James should be making that run to going behind, and he might occasionally get opportunities in between the left-sided centre-back and the left-back where he's running into that channel and getting on the end of things. So it's another reason why I think he would actually make some sense for some of these games coming up. But that's where I'm at. Those things would help, even with Farke in charge. I'm sure another manager would probably come and see that pretty quickly, but hopefully Farke does. Martin, anything else you would do differently, or are those things kind of where you're at as well?
I think it could be worth trying a change to the base shape. Maybe a 3-5-2 could be something which could work quite well. We obviously like to play with our wing backs or full backs quite high up, so that automatically gets the most out of Goodmanson and out of Bogle, free them up to be in the attacking third a lot more often. Still keep the same midfield three in there, and then you just drop one of the attackers. And I would, if it was to anyone I'd choose, I would probably go with Okafor and Calvert-Lewin up front as a pairing. Okafor has played as a striker over in Italy a lot in this kind of setup with two up front, but he would just generally look to play quite wide quite often and leave the other striker to do much of the central work, occupying work. So I think that could be one way around it. Gives us an extra body in defensive areas. We'd have a left-sided centre-back in Struijk on the left to get the balls forward. On occasion, one of these centre-backs could get a little bit further forward to aid, maybe get in the box for crosses here and there, and we'd still keep a reasonable amount of defensive solidity when we did that. It is something that we discussed before this season started, that now we've got more options for centre-back. We've got a good amount of numbers there. We could try this, and we'd have the players to do it. I think Pascal could be a very good outside centre-back, and I think Roden as well would be an outstanding outside centre-back, if I'm totally honest. The way he drives forward with the ball, that'd be a real asset, and he'd be able to do that more often in this kind of setup. So there's definitely things that he can try to get performances back on track, but do I think he'll do them? Maybe, actually, because he did do it with Norwich, actually. This is something he went to a back three system with Norwich when things had gone quite badly a few times, and so that he has done it in the past. So it's potential that we could see it, but who knows?
Yeah, can't believe you didn't mention Ethan Ampadu as a centre back there. It's clearly his best position based on how this recent games have gone. Yeah,
he might as well sack me off this podcast
you
for not saying it.
To be honest,
he would get so eaten in this division, wouldn't he? A centre back.
Yeah, I can't believe there's
yeah
comments. Now that BL's not worked, in some fans' opinion, already writing him off after a couple of games, and Strauch's not worked again based on very little. That Ampadu should go back in at centre back. I've seen that discourse start rearing its ugly head online. You're idiots. I'm not going to add anything more to that. Anyone else we want to talk about that struggled in this game, or that's been more struggling recently, I guess? Or again, is it not really that relevant because again, it's probably more to do with how we're playing right now? Anyone that stands out to either of you, or can I just move on to the final question?
Let's move on. I'm good. I don't want to labour on individuals too much.
Let's end on a high note then. Who was actually like the players that stood out here? I've got two names, but I'll let you guys go first. Martin.
Gabby Goodmanson was good in this one. That one drive that he made, took it from our own third all the way into the opposition box. The only issue was that none of our players could keep up with his run. I don't think any of them really expected him to go as far as what he did. I don't think he did in that moment. He just kept going and going and going. And yeah, it was great. And
I can't believe that people watched
as well.
That, by the way, and I saw some Firpo discourse online saying he's not even an upgrade on Firpo. But Firpo wouldn't have even made it 10 yards into that run.
No, I'm sorry. I love Junior Firpo. I love Junior Firpo. I do, but he would not be able to manage anything close to that. The physicality of Goodmanson in that moment and the pace that he drove forward with the ball. That's not Firpo's game.
Yeah.
It's not. He wouldn't be able to be anywhere near capable of that. And I think it was just both the left side, to be honest, who were decent in this one. Okafor had a few nice moments in this one as well, but. Yeah, that's really all I can say. I don't think there was anyone who was really terrible in this one. It's just a lot of players were below par.
I thought the midfield was pretty terrible, to be fair. Like, I don't think any of them played well, but I think, again, it's a function of the system and the way they were asked to operate. I just don't think it suited them at all. Dan, who are your standouts?
Yeah, I mean, Goodmanson's the obvious one. Okafor, and I mean, I didn't hate Aronson. I mean, I generally do, but not in this game. It's a really weird one. I don't hate him really, but I find him frustrating. I was thinking, Beale's having a good game until he really didn't. If that makes sense. Like first half, I thought he did okay. I thought he's looking a bit more stable here, looking a bit more steady, and then it kind of went wrong for him. So. That's a bit weird. Like Perry made that great save before he conceded, like before we went up.
That was brilliant.
He played it off the line and all that good stuff. Yeah. So I was, great. We've got something to build on here, some good performances. Like Beale's looking a bit more solid. Perry's kept something out. Okay, the team performance is rubbish, but the backs to the wall stuff is going okay. And then it kind of didn't in the second half. So, it's just Goodmanson, isn't it? And probably Okafor, basically, those two. Nemec's finish was good. Give him credit for that. He tried hard.
Yeah, I was actually going to shout Metro out as well, just for that moment, real quality. I do think he's a better finisher than Calvert-Lewin. And I think I said this in the summer, actually.
Yeah, he does.
It's just that it's the other stuff that Calvert-Lewin's a little bit better at. I think that like Metro's like technical side in terms of ball striking is a bit better, but Calvert-Lewin's better at the all-round stuff. I think
Calvert-Lewin aerially is as good as anybody. Who's better than Calvert-Lewin in the air in the Premier League? There probably is someone, but there's not many. Haaland, obviously Haaland, but anybody else? Yeah.
Well, you say Haaland, but I don't think he's actually that good at heading the ball. He's just good at winning them, and there's a bit of a difference, I guess.
Well,
although he does seem to have worked on it as a striker recently. To be fair to him, Aronson, I kind of agree. It's just that when he did win the ball back, because he was winning the ball back quite a bit, but not a lot of quality when he did. And then Goodmanson was great, as we know. Didn't really understand why he got taken off. Okafor, as much as some people are still frustrated, he always looks like the brightest player. He always looks like the player is going to do something. And even if it doesn't happen, I still think that's important. And I still think he works his fullback really well. Like, he gives them a problem. He gives them something to think about all game. So
Yeah.
I'm really impressed with him recently as well, despite us being quite poor. And then I wanted to shout out 2 players who I actually thought came on and did well, which was Strauch and James. I think both of them played well when they came on. I thought Strauch looked really assured, actually, when he came on. And looked like he wanted to take the game by the scruff of the neck. And similarly, Dan James, but as a forward player, like trying to get shots away, it wasn't always effective, but he was there. He was busy again, but in a more impactful way than Aronson by trying to get shots on at a goal. So, but that's basically it. Goodmanson also made the best chance for Bogle that we really had, even though it looked like a shot to me that Bogle nearly scored. It's not quite the same thing, but still was one of our better moments. They were few and far between. I think that's it. You can subscribe on Patreon at what, Martin?
Patreon.com/ASAW Patreon.
And they should go and do that because we've got extra content coming up this week. But yeah, don't forget, like and subscribe, leave reviews on all of the things you're listening to this on. And yeah, go over to YouTube. Like I say, it really helps us out. But that's all that we have time for tonight. As we say, we'll be back with a bonus pod very soon, just for the Patreon only members. We're thinking of something squad related, as we said, about January incomings and all of that stuff. But all that's left me to say is thank you very much to Martin.
Thank you as well, Adam.
And thank you to Dan.
Cheers, Adam.
And thanks everyone listening. We hope that we weren't too negative, and we hope that we articulated ourselves well enough and that you're also feeling similarly to us. But if you're not, please be nice with your feedback. We've had a bit of heated feedback recently, so we'd appreciate everything we get and all the support we get, but it would be nice to have some just sensible responses if we do get it. But yeah, enjoy the rest of your week, guys, and we'll see you for that bonus pod soon. Goodbye.